I don't know about you guys, but I actually feel like it was only 4.5 hours or something. Maybe not even that, 3.5 hours. But that feels like a hell of a lot of cross-country action has unfolded. We're going to dissect it all for you. Sam D and Kylie Roddy are with me. Kylie, I'm going to come to you first. Reaction on the course and the day as a whole. What do you make of it now?
I was actually a bit surprised how many went in the time early. Like Sophia Schoberg, complete star. She's always quite quick on that lovely nimble mare of hers. So the time was achievable, but then I was a little bit surprised about how many faults then happened after we realised the time was achievable. I guess I think when we look back at it, big surprise for me was Janelle. She was a bit my banker actually. I thought she was going to be a whiz around there, and feisty little mare would be game on for that. So on the whole, I don't think it was too far out what we predicted. I thought there was plenty of clear rounds. I thought there was a few bits of time here and there, but I was surprised that people didn't take the time a bit more after they realised the time was more than achievable.
I think the bit that stands out for me is actually the 3-from-3 format. We're going to get the numbers for you. They're being worked out at the moment in terms of what the actual clear rate was. But actually, it's not going to be on paper the most influential day. And yet, in terms of the team competition, there has been so much drama. Teams coming into it, coming out of it. That it's been a real mix-up in terms of that. Sam, D, how have things been at HQ?
Frantic, but like a lot of things stand out to me here. So in terms of the 3-from-3, Germany and Australia, think about how they're feeling now as teams and team management, because they're out of this competition, both of them with two excellent rounds on the board. Julia and Shane Rose did good jobs. Like, they probably led us to believe that the time was going to be harder than it might be. But then Chris Burton and Michael Young were both excellent, and then Christoph Waller and Kevin McNabb contributed to that chaotic and incredible second line of riders, which really defined the roller coaster of this competition. The standout thing for me, and we talked about it in our live reaction show, which is why you've always got to have one eye on the Echo social media channels, folks. It's where the sport's at. Kylie, when you talk about that surprise of who did make the time, who didn't make the time, what we've got here in the sport now is our teams like Sweden, who've always been able to, in fairness, turn up and win medals. Like, Sweden can, they can do this. But like some of the rounds from Belgium, from the Netherlands, what the Japanese team did today, the Japanese team to be sub 100 in a competition like this, 3-from-3. Can I take like everyone on a journey to go back to London and think about the Japanese team when it was 5 in a team and only 3, and they just had riders just coming out the saddle, left, right, and centre, and it was that kind of a day. 6 years later, at a World Championships, trying to qualify, they didn't even need to qualify for the home Olympics, but clearly on a mission for that. But 6 years later, at the World Championships, they were 4th as a team, really pushing big nations like Ireland, who were on the podium. 6 years on again, they're now in the driving seat, leaving big nations behind them. That's progress. That is success in sports, starting with failure, moving on to progress, and ending up with very close to perfection. What they did today, it was outstanding. But it shows the quality of riding, the attitude. Like, look at those riders. We can sell this sport based on what I saw today. Yes, some people would say it wasn't big enough. Yes, some people won't like the 3-from-3 because of the Australia, the Germany thing. Is it where the sport was 20 years ago? Absolutely not. Was it exciting? Can we sell it? Did we feel something? Are we engaged? Absolutely.
It's interesting, actually. Japan are, in terms of the team standings in the team bronze overnight, 93.8. So within 3 fences of Great Britain, who currently lead. It makes me really sad, Sam. You've just talked about the progress that they have made in the last 12 years, that actually this feels like the crescendo, because the riders heading back to Japan in September, they're not going to be nearly the force that they have been. They very much focused on Tokyo. That was the goal. And we've kind of had another 3 years of funding and real drive behind them, because obviously it was a short Olympic cycle, which feels like the bonus. But it feels sad.
No, don't be sad. It's going to change. The people are going to see that. They're going to inspire.
Do you reckon?
The movement. Samsung are going to come in and they're all going to have prefixes on the names that we'll have to take off during the Olympics because of rights and stuff like that. Japan will be back. Don't you worry. Success breeds success.
It would make me so happy. And to be honest, I would dearly love to see them finish on the podium here this weekend and it drive them to come back, but also to kind of give the reward for all of that hard work. And they had 3 brilliant performances. Yoshiaki Iowa, MGH Grafton Street made it happen. And actually that was Japan's first ever clear inside the time at an Olympic Games on the cross country. And then of course, Kazuma Tomoto went and made it 2 in one day. Vinci de Levine, one of the last to go. So unbelievable from Team Japan. Let's talk about the Brits for a second.
They're also going to inspire, not just the Japan story, but there's going to be owners in this sport, investors in the sport that go, do you know what I want to do? Maybe just with my American riders or just with my Irish riders or just with my English riders. I want to put a team together. Might not be an entire country, but I want to do what they did because look at the success of what they've done. I'm going to back, or I'm going to get 4 or 5 riders together, build a team.
And the people who've been involved, because of course, there is into horses, but you can also go to Laurent Bousquet. There's probably
William Fox-Pitt,
Angela, of course,
Jackie Potts.
They've selected people, but that doesn't always ensure success. It's not overnight. We saw that at Tokyo. It wasn't kind of fairy tale finish. But if you were to put this together as a story, and imagine yourself in the story of Japan over that 10 or 12-year period now, from London through to what we're going to see happen tomorrow. On our predicted medal chances at the moment, they're up around an 87% chance of finishing on the podium. And what that means is that it's very, very likely that we see an incredible moment for the sport, which we have to talk about and recognize not just as plucky old Japan, but actually as a team that went on a journey for 12 years and broke a dominance which hasn't been broken since 1980. Look at the investment and the history that Australia have. The same for, kind of any of the big 6 nations. But look at the 1980 reference is that no team outside the big 6 nations, do them in alphabetical order.
Australia, Great Britain, Germany, France, New Zealand, and the USA. The only 6 nations in over 40 years, 44 years.
But go through that list. Think about the Brits, Nicole. They've got a whole press office. They've got a massive engine driving them. Think about the French on home soil. Think about the size of that engine. Think about USEF and what it takes to put those 4 people out, how big the support team is, how long and how traditional and how much learning has gone into those big 6 teams. And that's what keeps that cycle alive. That's why no one else breaks in, because you can't get into a machine that is so well oiled, so strong. So for Japan, in the Netflix documentary, in the story, the bedtime story, whatever it is, when you're talking about what Japan are about to do, what we saw today and what is very likely now to convert into the first Olympic medal in 44 years for a non-Big 6 nation, that's when we should feel something and celebrate something. There's an amazing story there with the top 2, the home soil, and of course the record-breaking all-star Brits. There is stories there, but for me, the day is going to belong to a couple of individuals who I'm sure we'll get to, and I think in particular, that Japanese team, the dedication, the long distance from home, the amount of time away from home, the amount of people involved, I think is a really, really special story that we should really get behind as a sport.
Can we talk about Japan, Nicole?
I was going to. There's a few of them. There's a few of them though, because actually, you look at the team leaderboard, and you've got Great Britain, France in gold and silver, Japan in team bronze 93.8, Switzerland 102.4 in 4th, Belgium 111.0 in 5th. There's a flag penalty for Sweden under review. They're currently in 7th on 120.1. They could actually climb the leaderboard depending on the outcome of that as well. All of those nations are going to upset, in theory, what we have, come to expect at the Olympic Games. So if it isn't Japan tomorrow, it'll be one of the others, which is so unbelievably exciting. Switzerland, I would say, just take us back to 2019, guys, when Switzerland had a last gasp team qualification at Buccolo in the Nations Cup event, the final Nations Cup event of the year. They qualified through the Nations Cup series. They'd missed qualification through the Worlds, there's missed qualification through the Europeans, and they picked it up through Buccolo. 5 years later, they are in the mix for medals at an Olympic Games against some really, really strong, powerful teams. And that, for me, is, again, another story of a team pulling together and actually building. They haven't had quite the sacrifice. They haven't had the funding, I wouldn't imagine, that Japan have had as well. But they have still been able to pull together a brilliant result here.
Certainly one of the things that we talked about today, if you go back to the test event, is that when we talk about Japan being a story over 12 years and a multi-part story, the Swiss story, recognizing the influence of big families like, you know, the Vogs being one, and we'll talk about Felix, the history and tradition that they have, it certainly feels like the rise of Switzerland is dedicated more to one particular person coming in from a coaching point of view. I think in a way that you might be able to.
He would disagree. Andrew would. It is a big team. Like, there is a big team behind it. But I agree. I think to go and win on cross country day, like, that's the other thing that's happened here. When you look at that leaderboard, you know, you got to do it on cross, particularly with regards to the team medals. You got to do it on cross country day. When you look at the individual medals, you still got to do it on dressage day for sure. You know, individual winning is about that first phase. Team winning is about the middle phase. That's why I enjoyed today so much. And again, Swiss and Japan, they've stayed with it. They've stuck at it. Not every championship goes according to plan, but they didn't go away, persevered, and today is their day. One
thing I would just put up on Switzerland, they have actually only fielded a team at 2 past Olympic Games, Atlanta 96, Tokyo 21. They're here in the mix for a medal in Paris 2024. That is absolutely huge. Right, let's talk for a second about a couple of the other big moments of the day. Let's start with the British team, because there's a few bits to unpick there. They lead overnight. At the moment, they're on a score of 82.5. The news that came in right at the end of the day was that Ross Cantor, Lordship Scruffalo have been given a flag penalty, under review, but watch this space. At the moment is there, so that's what we work with. They could still set a new Olympic record. However, they would be under quite a bit of pressure from the home French side, who are in Team Silver, if that was to happen. Let's go through those performances, because Tom McEwen, JL Dublin, for me, Kylie, that I think is one of the rounds of the day, because he went out and he absolutely delivered under pressure. It's rare that you see Tom McEwen show emotion in the middle of a cross-country round, and you saw every bit of that today.
I thought Tommy worked his magic, actually, didn't he? Set out the start box straight away. He was in top gear and off he went. And I thought there was a really magic moment where I felt a bit of Kentucky come back off the bank, and the horse had like a little bit of a trip. And there was that, in Kentucky he did his little circle, and he still got home inside the time and got a good result there. But he actually got hold of the horse, picked it up, delivered it. I mean, the instinct, the riding, he delivered for his horse and his country. So I just thought he properly, for the first time, his head down, getting properly stuck in, and the horse galloped all the way to the finish. Actually, I didn't see the last 2 fences. I didn't see the horse drop off the bridle, where previously we might have seen that a bit. So Tom has done his homework and made sure that all of those bits were in order to create the result that was needed. So good boy, Tom, and well done, Dubs.
I thought of you, Dee, quite a lot when Tom was taking a pull to the final fence. But he had the time to take a pull, and he
No, credit where it's due. I said just before we came on, I felt he was the one that would come under pressure in the British team, and not at all. I think there was a moment, Kylie, that I think is the same one that I noticed. There was a moment, probably about the 4 or 5 minute mark, where there was a head-on shot of him. I was watching on Discovery, so I presume it was the same camera feed for everyone. But there's a moment where he kind of. He kind of gave him a reminder to say, like, stay on. Like, you could see it in his face. It wasn't to the horse. It was more, do you remember that moment where we said, like, he's on it, like, look at his face. And Yeah, it was a super round, and very good jumper and very experienced rider. And I think when you see what happened with the other teams, getting that first rider home, getting the information back in, it's a really, really important position. It may have been the difference as to why Tom McEwen went over Yaz Ingham. In the terms of the experience, I don't know. I'm speculating, but I think because he went in first place, hugely important position, and it set them up for currently not quite 3 clear rounds, but it set them up for a commanding position all across the day, right up until the last 5 minutes, Nicole.
I know the drama.
Your lead is not
I actually just had the video of Roz's flag sent through to me, and I was just surreptitiously watching it. And it's a side-on view. Wouldn't have a clue whether it was clear or not. They'll get a head-on view and they'll be able to see. Fingers crossed. Watch this space. But
the drama. They're coming out the woods. Is that where it is?
It's coming out the woods. It's coming out the woods. I'll forward it to you. You can show Sam on the sly, and then Sam can give us his input.
You came on our update on our live show at lunchtime, and you're like, "Oh, those penalties are going to be taken off. I can be quite confident of that."
Well, now I'm not so sure.
I know. I'd say from a side-on view,
we're watching here.
Yeah, it's very side-on. Very side-on. It's the final element. Yeah. It'll take a while.
And have you got it the wrong side as well, or have you got it the flag side?
No, we've got it the wrong side. I would just say, if Roz's 15 is removed, big if, GB will be 19.7 penalties ahead of France in second place, which would be the largest lead a team has had after the cross-country since Atlanta 1996. If. What do you reckon, Sam?
Could I ask you not to deal in ifs for a second and talk about one of the other greatest things we've ever seen in the sport, and Michael Young. I mean, when he has won major, like obviously he's done what no one ever did before. When he had Sam, we said he took the sport to new levels. While he had Sam, he won championships on Halunka. He won championships on Fisher Takanu, the little baby 8-year-old, little baby Takanu, in the mud and the hills in Blair. Come on, the German sunshine to the Scottish whatever, I'll help you out. And he's phenomenal. And he jumps at 5-star level. He goes to a lot of shows. He's very busy. He's not as committed, probably. We don't see him in the 5 stars as much, if at all. So we don't see him in the sport all the time. We'll be talking about another man that's been jumping at 5-star that we haven't seen in the sport much, and the two of them are right there, by the way. But he's outstanding, and I think sometimes we like in this sport when we're just dealing in emotion, and particularly, I'm looking at an English host. It can be a bit painful sometimes being handed beatings all the time by someone that good, but he raises the bar. He is why, he's part of why Laura Collett breaks records, is because she knows that's who she's got to beat. He sets a bar, but he delivers, and he's an outstanding asset to the sport. He's a great, I think he's just such a great addition to the sport, as well as everything he's achieved. And he's actually leading his first Olympic Games after cross country. He's won 2 Olympic Games.
It's interesting because he's been to 4 Olympics. He's been inside the time at all 4 of them. Of course, he's not been clear at all of them because he had the 11 penalties in Tokyo, but he has been inside the time 4 from 4. Both London and Rio, he finished on his dressage score. I think I'm right in saying, Sam, you'll remember this. In London, he became the first person to ever finish on his dressage score to win. Is this?
Been a bit of research since then. So
okay, fine.
Andrew Hoy did it in 2000.
To win, she said.
Oh, to win. Sorry, Nicole. Yeah,
to win. Right. And then he did it again in Rio 4 years later. He's on track. Obviously, 2 rounds of show jumping stand in front of him tomorrow. His round was beautiful today. He cruised around inside the time with a good, comfortable margin. Laura Collett, who led the dressage, Olympic record in the first phase. We talked about this a bit at lunchtime, but there'd have been plenty of people that actually were still watching the competition and have absolutely no idea what we said. So I want to go back to it. Laura did a class round. It's since come out that actually the horse London lost a shoe. So she had to nurse him around a little bit in terms of the twists and the turns. 2 seconds over the time. And in terms of how expensive those 2 seconds could potentially be, obviously a brilliant performance. However, dropped her below Michael Young in terms of the individual standings, and actually then within a fence of the bronze, whoever's in bronze medal, which previously she was over a fence in hand of the bronze medal. Sam, what do you make of that now? And actually just put into context where that sits in terms of the wider coverage of the competition this weekend, because it feels like 2 seconds, 0.8 penalties is a huge moment.
I think that communicating the sport, so like Dee and I will come at this from 2 angles, and they're both correct. So to really drill into the 2 seconds, be like, that's huge. You just handed over the lead of an Olympic Games is what it will look like, to be honest, to most people watching. That's what it will look like. So you got to go big on that angle, because that's the excitement and that's the drama. If you want to talk about it from an athlete's point of view, and I also think with the history of London has been to 4 championships and his best finishing place is 9th. Yes, he's won 3 5-stars, but he's yet to get into the top 8 at a championship. So you come here, primary objective, don't let my team down. Second objective, get my team a medal. Third objective, get myself a medal. Fourth objective, get myself the best possible medal I can, which is obviously gold. So on the 4th one, she's handed over a big part of the win chance. But she has not let her country down. She has got her team in the absolute driving seat. She has got herself in a good, strong position to win a medal. But that
stuff's never in question for me. Like, I think that's a straw man argument whereby you're talking about the 2 seconds and then saying she hasn't let her country down. Never in question. Never in question. Not even a tiny bit of consideration. Like, of course, like they're the all-star team and they're leading.
I'm not saying that someone would say that she has,
but to acknowledge it for me, kind of.
How does she feel? I'm saying, how does Laura feel? Is she sat there ruling to? Is she?
Absolutely, she is.
You think she is? And that's where I think, because she's, because of the relief of being okay. I've not made a big mistake. The contentment and the satisfaction of being like, God, we are in a strong place for gold. I mean, it's on the fence now with the 15, but certainly the part she's played, I'm in a strong position for a medal and my best ever championship finish. And now it has to, a medal before you don't want 4.
I don't think you can be in an individual gold medal position at an Olympic Games and not be disappointed. As a top level elite athlete who is unbelievably competitive, and not just think, 2 seconds.
Oh yeah, there's
Sam,
that
feeling. The first thing Sam said, having come home at Burley last year when only 2 people made the time, you were 1 second over, Sam. The first thing you said was, I know where I lost that 1 second. It was on the way to the first fence, and you kicked yourself very hard for it. And yet you had put in a brilliant, brilliant round. But it is ultimately, I think, and it's an important point here, the team aspect to it does have a big part.
I was going to say that. I think it's really important, the order of importance that Sam put his thoughts across, because it is a 2-part competition. The team is the first medal to win. So actually, the way that Laura's done it, she's ensured that. So the first team medal, up to date, barring tomorrow, she's ticked those boxes and done those really well to help that whole procedure be as the best possible outcome. And then I would think, a bit like Sam said, the order of importance then is then once you've helped the team win the gold, which is your first competition, it's then what medal can I win for myself? So I think Sam, you're actually pretty bang on there. And at Burley, Nicole, Sam might have said that, but he wasn't in a team competition. Had he have been, and his 1 second meant that he had the information to give back to his teammates and they won a gold medal, would he be proud of that moment? You've got to make sure that you see all aspects when you've got the team element in play versus your individual.
I remember Andrew Nicholson's press conference at badminton in 2015, I want to say
17. Yeah.
But I believe it at the time.
I don't believe it.
I probably still don't believe it now, but he was able to say it. He was able to say, which means he wasn't fuming and raging, because if he was fuming and raging, he couldn't have hit it.
And he's a mastermind, man. Don't forget
he's
that.
Playing the mind game.
It sounds like he's even got.
He was conducting the Swiss orchestra, and he was conducting us all in
Sounds like you got in your head. You're going to tell me that it's better to come from behind. It's better.
No, excuse me. No, I don't believe that. I don't believe you'd ever intentionally do it. Of course you wouldn't.
Of course you wouldn't.
But you are like, firstly, when we're going to be talking about David O'Connor setting the all-time finishing score record in Olympic Games at 23.3. So Michael has a rail in hand over that, but you need it. David only had to jump one round of show jumps. To jump any round on the last day at a championship now, and we saw the size of the show jumping in Bertoni. We even saw the size of the show jumping in badminton. The sport is definitely ramping up the size of a course that they provide on the final day. To jump one of those rounds, show jumps, to jump one of those rounds that we see on the final day is a daunting task. To do it twice.
Yeah, but
before
you write custom made off too much, I would say that I wouldn't put a lot of the horses that we saw today up against custom made in terms of the cross country.
No,
that
the
he
horse is very good. It's just the rider.
They jump 2 rounds now, but they actually do a totally different level of cross country. And I think I can't. I just if you want top level sport, I'm totally with you both on the team, but I can't imagine any situation where a person breaks an Olympic record and is going for gold and is okay with the fact that her big rival in the sport, let's be honest, this is the reason that Laura doesn't have the finishing score record at 5-star. Like, it's like if you go back to Kentucky into badminton, what Laura says in her interview for badminton is, Michael did a 20 point whatever last week. There's no way I was going to, or no way I didn't want to chase that down. Or she references it straight away. There's only a couple of people in the sport who are actually possibly only 2, and maybe you'd say Banzai on their day, but like we haven't seen that in 2024. I think
she's going for the record. I mean, she's still on the record score. If she can there, she's going to break Mickey's record.
And arguably, you'd say she's more of a chance. I would say still potentially than Fisher Chipmunk. Like the Fisher Chipmunk recent rails are not perfect. There's time penalties in there. Now we can argue about schooling, and myself and Sam have been talking about that. Like, he is a master at schooling Fisher Chipmunk in the show jumping. If you go back to when he really has to jump clear, you would say more often than not he does. He had 2 down, of course, at Bertoni with Fisher Chipmunk. He had 1 down, I think, at Tokyo. Is that right?
Across the 2 rounds.
Across the 2 rounds. He had jumped clear this year at Aachen. He jumped clear last year at Aachen.
He's only had 1 rail since Bertoni. 1 rail down. That was when he lost Le Moulin. When he led Le Moulin, he lost the title in Le Moulin.
Back though, like 2 rounds ago, like 2 competitions ago.
So he had one rail down in Le Moulin this year. Before that, he hadn't had a rail down since Bertoni in 2022 internationally.
But that Le Moulin is quite recent, and it was jumping on the last day, even though it was a short format.
But it was 1 pole. 1 pole.
Yeah.
I would say that you could look at.
You know, I'd be setting it in that context of, like, I do think today is important from a top level rivalry sport handing over piece, with all of the things that Kylie and Sam are talking about in terms of team. And Kylie, I would agree, the first time Sam did the order up, and most of it I agree with, but there's just this part of me which wants to believe. You said something in the bedtime story that in eventing everyone pretends to be really nice to each other. And I know that it's a joke, but actually in eventing everybody is really nice to each other, and I've seen it with the way they advise each other and help each other. But I want to believe so much that Andrew Nicholson was not saying in that badminton press conference, in real life, he wasn't saying, yeah, it's okay for me to be 3rd, and I prefer coming from this position. What he's really doing is the same way as he used to circle the ring and get everybody clapping before William came in directly after. They are all master tacticians. They're all in each other's heads. And whatever they all say this evening, there is a level 1, which is about the horse, level 2, which is about the team. But you have to believe that they want that individual gold medal so much. Because if you don't believe that, what are we in for? I can't get into. I would go off and I'll watch the All Ireland. Mayo or Armagh are going to play against Galway in the next hour. There's not one person on a 30-person panel that every single bit of their body isn't about becoming an All Ireland champion. Last week, Cork were beaten by Clare by a single point. In 25 years' time, those lads walk out onto Croke Park for the.
That's how they're feeling about the team. Look, I agree, of course, and it's got, but she won't be showing it. She probably is feeling it, like Nicole says about the birdie thing. Of course, she do. But there's still more to do, and it does feel a bit like you can't show it. You can't be kicking things around.
You won't be doing any of that.
Yeah,
but
of course you
will.
It matters, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it does matter.
I don't think it's positive.
Let's talk.
For the record, while we're here, I still think Collett's going to win.
He's got the graphic ready.
I actually made the graphic today, just for anyone who believes in jinxes. Actually, Maz made it, but I showed Sam. There's a winner's graphic already done, lined up, ready to go.
Any Curse of Diarm people who are out there?
To be fair, I know the F Ratings team, and there will be a winner's graphic for anybody that is in with a chance of winning, because all bases covered. I won't lie, I got quite excited for anybody. You can't bet in eventing, can you? In generally speaking, can't bet outside of the Olympics unless you take Dee and Sam on one of their bets. I actually had a sneaky little bet, got a bit carried away, and now have the first four. The four bets I put on are the first four in the individual standings.
Exciting.
Delighted with life right now.
Yeah. Well, Michael Young at 25-1, Laura Collett at 13-1.
You can't resist. Definitely not. Let's for a second just pick up on the French team, because the French are in team silver. Of course, they won the team gold back in Rio 2016. They were team bronze medalists in Tokyo a couple of years later. The atmosphere for the French team, we always knew that the French crowds were going to be wild enough. But the atmosphere from the crowds was just absolutely extraordinary. Kylie, I got goosebumps every time that a French rider was out on course. You could hear them coming, even through the screen.
It was unbelievable, wasn't it? I just literally, well, obviously he was last to go, but Nicola Touzant, I'm sure the crowd carried that horse over the last fence. Like, you know, he dropped his whip, he was trying to get all excited, and he's chasing the horse home, and the horse was picking up where he could and did a great job. And then the crowd get involved, and, you know, the horse virtually walked after he crossed the finishing line, but the crowd were just insane. And the same for the other two riders, like Karim Legouag. He did an amazing job, didn't he? I mean, what a pathfinder. He made it look real good.
We talked about this at lunch, actually. Sam, there was that moment, wasn't there, with the funny step in the ditch. And there was a real kind of, will he, won't he make this final element? And Karim made it happen, but the horse helped him out as well. You could see the emotion on his face when he happened, he got through the flags. The French crowd obviously responded accordingly. But that, to me, was a moment that would help us sell the sport. If you've never seen eventing and you watch that is one of those moments of magic. Yeah,
and you probably need to watch a few of the first riders go, so that you're getting into a rhythm, you're relaxing, you're getting to know the course. And then next thing, France were drawn quite late, but they're obviously on home soil. They're obviously right there chasing a medal. And we know the jeopardy of this 3 from 3. We know the jeopardy that if someone loses a team member, it's just game over. And that was the moment when we thought we were going to see our first big nation drop out of the competition. We all went, and then he got the horse over, and we were like, oh my God. And then Karen puts all of the whipped cream and the sprinkles and the cherries on top. What we all wanted to see on home soil, emotion, what this man does time and time again. And it's so important that we do. And I'm not good at this as a writer, but thankfully for everyone, I'm not good enough to be in the headlines. But you don't to bring that emotion to the thing. Like, you want to be, and it's a tall order, because someone like me wants to be. That's why I don't get nervous and do things like that, is because I will be cold and objective, and that then stays on the finish line. So you are who you are, and that's fine. But the people who at some point you need to do something and give something back to the sport. I hope I do that with bedtime stories. I don't always do it at the finish line. Mid-round. And there were a few people like that. Like I tell you, someone at the very end, last competitor on course, Lara Delita Kirker-Meyer and her husband Kai Steffenmeyer have done has done a brilliant job with that Belgian team, and they were brilliant today, and put themselves right there. That was the one person that my WhatsApp went busy from multiple different places that I didn't expect, talking about lovely Lara, talking about emotion. One person being like, oh my God, I'm into this eventing now. I love Lara. That's what we're trying to do, you know, and we're creating, and they're coming from everywhere, you know, Felix and Lara, Berto's back, Young's back, the Brits are still there. We're all trying to catch them. To be honest, 95% of anyone who's not British is sort of, we love Roz and we love Graffalo, but if it gets a little bit closer, and we know trying to get a flag penalty removed on French soil when the French are chasing you, and what is that room? Ricky Wade, Chris Bartle, how are they going to win the room over?
Don't get me wrong, because I'd love to see that flag penalty taken away. Of course I would. I'm British, but if it isn't tomorrow's show jumping, the French are just over a rail behind the Brits. It's not far back then to Japan in the team bronze spot either. It is going to be so tight on the final day. All of the scores are going to count. They've all got to get through the final horse inspection as well, of course. But it will be unbelievably tight and very, very exciting. And actually, that's helps sell the sport as well, doesn't it? If it's all exciting. Can we talk about Chris Burton for a second, actually? Because Australia didn't quite deliver. Kylie, you said this morning Chris Burton was going to lead tonight. He hasn't, but he could still win.
No, I thought it was a great performance though, wasn't it? I was on Discovery, so they didn't show loads of it. We watched Magic Michael Young, and then he was on after, so there was like some bits that we didn't quite see. But actually watching those two men go together, it'd be, you know, you can't take anything away from Michael Young, but you watch somebody that's been away from the sport come back, the balance he rides in, the openness in the canter, the ability to adjust, to sit on a horse that he's not produced. I mean, all of those things, when we talk about the drama, the magic, how we sell the sport, all of that adds to the fairy tale. Like, that's part of what makes eventing, or it can appeal to lots of different people, and why it should appeal to lots of different people. Not one person in this sport has come from the same place. You know, partnerships are made from young horses and riders put together at 4-year-olds. And then we've got some others that haven't done that. We've had people that have gone away and come back. And then, like you guys were saying earlier, we've got the Japanese that have had to work really hard, and the 3 out of 3 rule has helped them create this magic story that's come in. But there's those individual stories that are a real highlight for us. And I think Chris being able to come out and ride as he did, fair play to Ben Hobday for producing the horse, obviously. But he didn't miss a beat anywhere that we saw on the camera. And I just thought he never looked like he was chasing the horse. The horse was able to read and measure, and the balance of the partnership was exceptional.
He will be hoping that the jumping tomorrow is absolutely enormous, because it'll look about 3 foot to him.
It's
and he jumps.
I mean, the jumping is like, we've already touched on it, hasn't it? The jumping is always being increased in dimension, or it's slightly squarer, it's more technical, long distances into short distances. They're trying to catch you out here, there, and everywhere. The turn back, so that you have to come with the power through the turn rather than straighten up and have the power. The guy that's had the most experience at that part would be Michael Young and Christopher Burton, if you look at where their homework has been throughout the winter and coming into the season. That's interesting.
From an analytics point of view as well, we saw something very, very rare in Tokyo, which is when we measure phase influence. I'm sorry that we go on about it so much on this channel, but the two phases that tussle to be the most influential are dressage and cross country. And dressage wins that battle from an individual point of view time and again, all the way throughout the sport until 5-star, and cross country takes over, which is, you know, that's probably what a lot of people would want. One phase that's never really been the most influential is the show jumping. You know, when you think about it, most people are between 0, 4, and 8. Whereas if you're doing a 17.5 or an 18.5 or even a 20, and you get 8 penalties over 28, which is a good score, so you can see how for people who don't believe it, because I know some people believe that show jumping is a very important phase, but actually in terms of penalties added, it isn't. But in Tokyo, it became the most influential phase. Now, a little bit because the cross country was less influential. Now, and today it hasn't been. But it is a reminder that at the Olympics, and I know we have two competitions, we have team and individual, but it's to do with the size. You know, we've talked a lot about London 52 and we talked a lot about records, but there were 3 fences on the ground just on show jumping day in Tokyo. Chipmunk, 2 on the ground in Bertoni, where we saw a big track. So no one is safe. Chris Burton has been doing a lot of show jumping. He's not been doing a lot of show jumping the day after cross country. You know, it's a new partnership with Shadow Man, getting to know what he's going to feel like. He hasn't really let Shadow Man completely off in terms of speed. He's going to feel a very different Shadow Man than he's ever felt his entire life tomorrow, I would say, because his qualifications were a lot slower than today. So no one is in the comfort zone.
Can
He
I
doesn't
ask
know what Shadow Man should feel like. That's nearly an asset to that man. He's going to ride the horse that he feels because he has no history with that horse.
Very good point.
I think before we leave Chris and before we leave cross country, I think Kylie, as you're talking about it, you know, the different elements of watching Michael, Sam, as you mentioned, it was so special to see Michael do that again. Don't think you'll ever get tired of watching the rhythm and the flow. But Michael sometimes, and we know with Chipmunk, has had to work harder across country. We've seen there was that flag, wasn't there, at Aachen, which cost him his cost him the Aachen win on Chipmunk a couple of years ago, when the year that Sandra won it. Chris, for me, feels like, and especially given the absence where he's not been riding cross country every couple of weeks or, you know, every day in training, Chris, for me, feels like when you look at what he's done today and you put it into the context of another clear inside time round at Aachen on a day when himself and was it Calvin Bachmann, was it only the two of them that actually did it? No rider has now been inside the time more at Aachen than Chris Burton. He's really, really gifted. Like watching the rhythm and the flow and knowing that it's come from a break, knowing that he's doing it on a horse that he hasn't produced himself, and almost knowing that it's a guarantee and it's not scrubbing, it's not having to push, it's not relying on a crowd to get you home. It's total ease and flow and calmness. And I remember, Nicole, when we used to have those SAP trackers in between any Event Rider Masters, and we used to be able to see the speeds changing. And like the only one that was like never changed was Chris Burton's. Like it was almost flat line where you saw these tiny little bumps where he was approaching a combination or where he was approaching a fence. For lots of people, you saw them drop down the speed really just before they jumped and climb the speed just after as they hit the flat patch. The rhythm that he has, even as someone who doesn't ride, it is really, really amazing to watch. And I think for him, given that we don't know what it will be or what he'll do in eventing after this, we know that we know that he's been gone from it for a while. Alongside the 12-year story of Japan, I think the Chris Burton story is a really special story as well. All that family and Beck and the support they've had. I think watching him today is going to be really, really special for them all. And given that he's a jumper now, given it going into 2 rounds of show jumping, I think there is something still special to unfold there. I'm delighted for him. He's a really good guy as well.
I love Diarm's like soft, emotional voice.
I know there was a lot of emotion. You two together watching a championship, I think, is one of my favorite things I've ever seen. Who else stands out for you today, Kylie? If we kind of say, right, step back, we've covered the big guns, we've covered those teams that have actually really performed. What else stands out?
I thought, and I said it at the beginning, like very early in our pre-show, Felix Vogue, I thought it was brilliant, actually. There's a few areas where he had to make it happen. But I think notable result. And again, it's all about the Olympic Games. It's all about story, the Swiss coming in. And I thought, actually, he wasn't on old past, he's Old Faithful. His Lamoulan winner there. He's on this lovely foreign-bred Canaan horse. But I thought he did an amazing job, and I think actually, I think you said about the families and stuff, but I've seen him ride for a long time, and I thought he's always worked quite a bit of magic, and sometimes been unlucky. Maybe he's had the odd misjudgment, but actually, I thought the last 2 days have been 2 very good days for him. So I hope he has a good third day too, because third and fourth day, hopefully. I thought he rode brilliant for me.
He's on track actually to set a Swiss record at the Olympics with his finishing score. I've just had a message sent in actually that the British camp, this is in Horse and Hound, published in Horse and Hound, are confident that the penalties for Ros are going to be removed. And the confident is a quote. I'm just going to put it out there now and say we are nearly 2 hours after Ros has finished her cross-country round, an hour and a half. The actual cross-country finished an hour ago. In my opinion, we should not still be looking at that leaderboard saying, oh, I wonder if those penalties are going to be removed, because all of the excitement gets removed. That's why you can't have necessarily cross-country as the final, I've offended Dee and Sam, they've left, as the final phase in a championship like this, because there is too much hanging around waiting to see. I would love to see in the future that we get almost a VAR. We have an official whose job it is to sit and review information such as this immediately on cross-country day, and we get immediate decisions.
I think that's right. Like we have it in tennis, don't we? We have all of these things. Of course, it's expensive, and of course, technology has its flaws as well, especially when it's put into an environment that has weather, it has crowds, all of these things that maybe influence that. Whereas your tennis court is your tennis court. I understand that, but I do think when there are such fine margins, when there are medals to be won, I think it is something that needs to be invested in and possibly help the sport. And it makes it clearer for our following. If we're thinking about selling the sport, when you say, oh, people look at a video and they sort of decide, you're a bit like, is that really fair? Or should it actually be a bit more technical than that? So I'd agree with you. I think we need some sort of format where it is pretty much black and white. And if it is technology, so be it.
We have enough top class officials that it would be easy to have a fourth man official as such, and that fourth official is in charge. Do you not agree?
People used to say this about football because like the mistakes with offside and that kind of stuff, and they introduced VAR, and you can never close the door on it. All it introduces is another human sitting there making more mistakes, looking at it on a camera. Like it's still going to be
it's
a human.
Same with rugby, trying to review it. Like they put time on it. But guys, we're all talking about it. I know it's we've got another day of competition tomorrow, but like if people are left on a bit of a cliff edge, if people are talking about the sport, what is engagement? Like controversy, like there are the clever people in the sport, the people who build things like darts, UFC, the people who actually make a sport commercial, people like Paddy Power, Ryanair, they think, how can we generate some controversy? The people who actually think like a business, how can we get people to talk about our sport? Oh, they're all hanging on for an hour afterwards talking about this should be this. They're debating whether it's right or wrong. We've just generated engagement. I know it's not. I know. Look, it's in every sport and it's still there. You can. I'm not saying which is right or wrong. I just think, like you asked about standouts today, and I'm going to be even more controversial, and I'm going to talk about 2 people today who I think have performed exactly how they wanted to perform, because about 15 years ago, they had a problem to solve and they had a vision to create. And they said, how can we make eventing exciting? How can we get more countries into the sport? How can we stop it being quite so dominant? How can we reduce horse falls? But David O'Connor and Catherine Orinda were trying to solve that problem. Giuseppe Della Chiesa before him as well. And they thought of things like 3 from 3, which people hate. And I know that Germany and Australia are probably not loving it right now either. They'd love a discard score. There's people on the bench like Kitty King and Yaz Ingham, and there's people from big countries that would prefer to be at that games and not be on a sideline. And not everyone agrees with it. There'd be people who'll be saying, why are you talking about Japan? We don't need to talk about Japan. Like, why aren't we talking? We should be talking about Germany and Australia on that podium. And we want dominant. We want the best people. winning all the time. But we've opened the door because people won't go away if they say, no, this is our ball and it's a pretty closed shop and we don't let other nations in. Japan wouldn't have given it a go. They have to see opportunity. They still have to push through the door to get it. There was no free lunches today. I saw Swedish riders, Belgian riders, Dutch riders, Japanese riders, Swiss riders going absolutely hard going today. And I think David O'Connor and Katrin Narinder had a plan that not everyone agrees with, and they got so much criticism for it. And I know people want that course bigger. I know people want that course longer. Parts of me want the course bigger. Parts of me want it longer. Of course they do. But was I excited today? Can I talk about a story? Can I sell a sport? Was there a script? Was it exciting? Is the sport growing? There are two objectives. We need a sport that can survive, and we need a sport that can thrive. Wasn't far off today.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. Whenever
we're so quick to criticize. Sorry, Nicole, that's it. And I just think that's where we be careful as well. Even when we're talking, like even the way we talk about horse welfare and things like that. Like I was explaining it, like that whole trot up thing. That's because horses are on absolutely no medication. Like riders that are in multi events, they're going to come out for their third event. They're going to be stiff in the morning. If they were a horse, be saying you can't even compete today. Sorry. You know, like that. Yeah. It's not about. There's something bad here, but it sounds bad sometimes the way we talk about it. It sounds like we're hiding something. We're not. We're just really looking after the athletes in the sport. That's all it is. We just got to be careful how we talk about it and not be. We love being critical. I don't know what it is about the human being, but we just love to criticize when we can, and we rarely congratulate people when they get it right.
I think whenever you change something, inevitably, people don't like change. I think it's human nature, largely. Personally, I actually don't mind the three in a team at all. I find it sometimes very complicated to explain the scoring system to people that aren't necessarily involved in the sport. I think that if it's complicated for us to understand, then it is complicated for everybody else. However, the theory of three in a team at every round matters is very, very exciting. And we've seen today it's had a huge impact on the team leaderboard. Other standout moments, Sam, you've already touched upon Lara Toledo-Kirkemire. For me, that was one of them. I had a tear in my eye when she finished. And I think actually that was the only tear I had all day, to be honest.
We were all exhausted on our knees.
Probably.
Emotions just... We were partly crying because it was over as well. I don't know. Yeah,
probably.
Yeah. No, she has won. No, as a person, she's definitely won the sport over.
What's cool about that story for me is that it's not the same as a young rider coming through and becoming a star really quickly. It's actually, again, it's something that's very special about eventing, where you build and you build and you build. And actually, if you look at, I often go back to it, Nicole, with that podcast you recorded with her earlier in the year. And then you have what happened at Le Moulin, and she talks through the story of, being a young kid and getting horses and what it means to be here. I think when you allow yourself to feel those stories, and I agree with you, like the Lara round was special. And I think it follows off the back of an incredible 2023 season. And then, of course, off the back of a first 5-star win. When I saw the message come in, like Sam did get a message and says, I love Lara, that's all it said. And I definitely felt, in a way that I probably didn't a year ago or 2 years ago, I definitely felt, I actually really love that girl too. That is a cool story.
Yeah, Helen Goff has actually sent in Louise and Romaika and Caspian. We spoke about her a little bit on the dressage review yesterday. They were the number 3 for Sweden, only a 10-year-old, and again looked really, really cool cross country. Sweden had a brilliant day. 3 riders, 2 seconds over the time, 1:15 penalties. That watch this space on that one, but they were brilliant. I want to actually, last thing before we wrap this up, and we'll talk about the jumping in more detail probably tomorrow morning. New Zealand. For me, New Zealand and Janelle Price in particular showed so much awareness and fighting spirit to still keep New Zealand in the hunt ahead of teams like Ireland. Ireland had 3 clear rounds cross country. New Zealand didn't, but New Zealand are ahead of them because Janelle kept her foot on the accelerator, came home fast with the 20 penalties. How important, Sam, is that? they'll be disappointed, of course they will, but you have to have that kind of killer instinct of knowing exactly what you need to do in that moment to be able to maximize what opportunities are still available.
Like, today is an exhausting day when you work in this office. I know you guys see the graphics and the quality of the graphics that go out, the insights. You know, Maria's doing the design, Dee's doing the design. We're trying to get captions right, language right. George is running numbers all the time. And then my job is feeding through to performance managers. And where the medal line, projected medal line was, and New Zealand were winners on the first day.
What's a projected medal line?
A projected medal line is where we think the bronze medal line is going to end up. And it's a really big thing because you have to do two things. You've got to control the controllables, which is your team riders and the instructions you give them, the mentality. And then obviously you have to hope that some of the things that are outside of your control will go right for you. So there was a moment like the Great Britain exit, the Germany exit with Christoph Waller and same with Kevin McNabb opens the door up to countries like Japan and stuff like that. Those are things that you can't control, but you can project, by the way. So we're talking managers through this all the time, how you can make the best decisions. And Jock Paget, he gets this, obviously he's a badminton winner himself. But Janelle, she knows first and foremost because it's clear what she's got to do, and she had the awareness to keep pushing. But then everyone had to keep pushing. But today was always a pushing day. So when you look at the difference between, you mentioned two countries there that are kind of close with Ireland on 3 clears, New Zealand didn't have it. We saw Germany getting onto the podium in Rio with cross country penalties. It's the tactical awareness. It's the strategies. This is now a very complex sport to do the performance side, and you do have to be looking ahead. You do have to not just knowing where you are, but knowing how do I compare and knowing where do I need to get to. Those are the 3 things. And whether that medal line was 110 or 115 or 120 and it was moving, knowing where you are and where you need to get to within that, that's why you see, it's, the countries that were pushing today and pushing hard, they knew where they had to get to. And it's that's what makes this, like, I loved how close it was. And how much people are still fighting. And there's, by the way, New Zealand made a big climb, like they were one of the beneficiaries of the difficult Bretoni. This competition is not over. They climbed a huge amount to get onto the podium in Bretoni, and they overcame quite a lot of odds to do that. Hirado and Falco, the 2 prize horses, are 2 of the best jumpers in this competition. And again, like questions that someone like Jock Paget is asking through that is he wants to know, he had analytics on the jumpers of the other countries that are in there. He's thinking and strategy, because that decides, do you go left-hand side, right-hand side? We knew seconds were going to count. And there's people out there who have heads exploding because where their brain has been absolutely up to 90 trying to get those decisions right and get those strategies right and knowing how hard to push. The riders ultimately have to deliver it, but you've got to manage the mindset of the riders and make them aware of how hard they need to push. Janelle needs no pushing. Like, those number 1 riders know their job, and it's go around, be clear, and be as fast as you can. That's always their order. But she never wasted a second afterwards. She was hungry from the get-go.
We're going to talk about the jumping in more detail tomorrow. Any final comments on cross country today before we all take a breath, go and lie down in a darkened room, have a stiff drink?
My question is, Diarm, did it cause enough drama? Were you happy with the drama levels? Yeah. I am, but it's quite good to feed that back to you, because that was your objective before we started.
Yeah, and it's a really good question. It felt different to Bretoni. It felt different to Tokyo, and I really like that, because I think over the next 10 and 20 years, we want to be able to look back on all these days as unique days. Like, I can remember so much of Rio and what it felt like, and I can remember so much of Tokyo and what it felt like. And part of my Tokyo memories are not that exciting. Like, I remember Oliver going inside the time, and I just remember the feeling that I had. And I think, Kylie, if I look back on today, or I feel back on today, if that makes sense, it's going to be a day that had the emotional pieces. there was a lot of happy stories in there. There's a lot of disappointment, which facilitates some of the happy stories emerging. Certainly, the moment, like from the get-go, I had and have felt very invested in the HSH Blake and Caroline Pamuchku story. That was a real disappointment for me when that 20 penalties came on for them. It was 20, not a 15, wasn't it? It was a 20, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And when that 20 penalties came up, because I don't think I saw it initially, I don't know if it was on screen. I think it only came up on the scores for me.
On the results, yeah.
Yeah. So I remember from the outset feeling something. And then I did get to see.
By the way, that is a learning and a moment that I still think makes champion. Like Laura Collett and London 52 go back to Lamoulan, their first championship as a pair together, and the other things, and there's plenty of them. Go back to Ross Cantor with All-Star B at the European. No rider's going to thank me for bringing these up, but everyone has had these moments. Sandra Allfight has had these moments. Ingrid Klimka's had these moments. Julia Krajewski in her first 3 championships, and then to go on and be an Olympic champion. So failure has to make champions. Guys, tune in. You have to get onto the Echo Ratings WhatsApp channel, because there will be another bedtime story tonight. And obviously, we can't always be excited. We can't always be kind of really. I don't know what you're talking about. There's heartache too. There's got to be. There's other layers of emotion as well. There's the emotional excitement, but there's making champions as well. And there's being able to wear that today. And of course, the US having to carry that disappointment today is tough. Caroline having to carry that today is really tough, because, it feels like you're on your shoulders. But that's your Pan Am champion. That's your highest rated 9-year-old horse in the world. That's a rider who won more internationals in the world than any other rider last year. They're going places. Today was a learning day, win or learn.
Final thing I'm going to say is there were 2, for me, quite emotional moments in Chaman du Monceau, Stéphane Landois, and Federman B, Boyd Martin, both coming home with brilliant cross-country rounds. Very much, I think, with a lot of people willing them on, and those former riders who, had the Olympic dream. They started the Olympic dream. I have absolutely no doubt we'll be looking down and enjoying that Olympic dream as well. And I think it kind of brings into context. We're talking about 2 seconds for Laura and everything else, and this whole kind of analytical conversation. But actually, that for me was one of the biggest points of the day. Right, on to tomorrow. Go and check out the Echo Ratings WhatsApp channel. There'll be loads more analysis in there. You'll be able to listen to Sam's bedtime story, which it's just absolutely brilliant. I think it's my new favorite thing. I don't know what I'm going to do last night. Put him?
I nearly didn't put it on Facebook last night. Like, I was putting it up, and I was like, I'll put it into the WhatsApp channel. That'll be fine. And then I was like, Jesus, can I really?
No, it's too.
Hovered for the first time.
It's so good.
Over the button.
We know your standards of where the line is very different to do. You're the riskiest of all of us.
Do you think?
You're hilarious. I'd love to do a live, honestly, if we did live, like cricket commentary, and you're watching, like if we were to do a dressage day, cricket commentators, they go on I'm sure most people don't, not many people are going to be watching cricket, but they go on kind of tangents. It's a long day. Like if the 3 of us did a live show, or it doesn't have to be 3, there'd be plenty of Mark Ruddock as well, and Kylie would bring them all in. But I'd be really worried where you would go, Nicole, where you could end up taking us.
I would be.
Would you do an accent? Would you do an accent just to finish cross country day? Would you do? Would you wish Chris Burton luck in your Australian? Your Australian accent is my favourite. If you just do your Australian accent, just sign us off in your Aussie accent, and then end.
I think this is a really good idea. Come on now, yeah.
I would be, how some people like Sam are naturally very funny. I'm just not very funny. I'm not a funny person.
No, I can assure everyone, this is very funny. This bit's going to be very funny.
Okay, all righty.
Right, we'll just sign us off then at the end. Just close out on this, and this will be it then.
So you're wishing Chris Burton huge congratulations and good luck for tomorrow, and from a very proud nation that is Australia. You're going to do that.
You pretend you're the Prime Minister and wish him luck on behalf of all the Aussies and his horse.
Okay.
And and say congrats to Beck, all the team, Shadow Man.
How much are you giving me to say here? Right,
You're the Prime Minister.
Okay.
Come on. All right,
Okay,
and then
right,
and then
right.
sign off. All right.
Okay, all right. Congratulations, mate. It was a ripper of a day. Looking forward to tomorrow's jumping. I can't look at you. Hang on. Wishing you all the very, very best of luck in the world. All right, mate? We'll see you tomorrow. Career suicide. Team career suicide.
That was excellent. Lovely, thank you.